Good morning, dear students. Today we'll discuss errors in survey research. In last video, we discussed how we can conduct survey researches. They are good, they are advantageous, but some errors are possible while doing survey research as well. So how can we see, like, what kind of the errors we can see in survey researches and how can we reduce them? We'll be discussing that in this PPT. Survey. This is basically to know what people think. You have to ask them. So that means two humans are involved in this. At least one human is involved who is going to answer the questions, and another human is also involved who is going to ask questions. Sometimes we ask questions through mail surveys. So one human is reduced from that, but still someone is making the questionnaire, someone is making the set of questions. So that human is directly or indirectly involved. So both the parties might make some errors. There might be some errors because of the respondent. There might be some errors because of the researcher, surveyor, questionnaire, or interviewer. Uh, these are two things, but there are some errors which happens due to contact of two humans. Those are also the possible errors. So we will discuss them in detail now. These are all the possible errors in survey research. Random sampling error and systematic error. These are two main type of errors. Random sampling error, it is the error which happens due to basically some errors in sampling, which will be discussed in later chapters when we will be studying sampling properly. Because if there is an error due to sampling, that can only be reduced with the help of proper sampling. That's it. There is no other reason, there is no other way to resolve these errors. Random sampling error. And then another one is systematic error. Systematic errors are those errors which I was talking about just now, that these are due to human responses or maybe because a human is asking the questions. So let us discuss random sampling error first, and then we'll discuss all the systematic errors. Random sampling basically is the difference between the result of a sample and the result of census conducted using identical procedure. For example, you have a population of 1 lakh people, right, which is to be surveyed, and you selected 100 people as the sample, and those 100 people would be responding to the questions you will be asking now. For example, you selected homogeneous 100 people, and and those people who are left out, 900 people, those are different than those 100 which you have selected. For example, you are doing the survey on a particular company, and by chance you have taken all 100 people from just one department, that is production, and you left all the people from finance, from marketing, from advertisement, from pre-testing, from post-testing, everything. You have taken people only from production head, no, production department. So your responses will be inclined towards that particular direction, the way production people think. So it is a kind of sampling error. That is why we always say that sample should be equally distributed among the whole population, right? So sampling error, random sampling error would be discussed in detail when we will learn that how should we actually sample the whole population. Second is systematic error. Yes, this should be read very carefully, that how systematic errors happen in while doing survey researches, so as to reduce them. Systematic error basically is the error resulting from some imperfect aspect of the research design or from a mistake in the execution of research. Basically, all sources of errors other than those introduced by the random sampling procedure are included. These errors are biases, or also called non-sampling errors. When we talk about sampling error, we can reduce them with the help of proper sampling. But when we talk about all the other errors while doing surveys, these are either called as non-sampling error. means these are not because of the sampling, but these are the systematic errors, and we can reduce them with the help of other parameters by taking care of them. The many sources of error that in some way systematically influence answers can be classified under two general categories, and these categories are respondent error and administrative error. Systematic error is generally said as sample bias, when the results of a sample show a persistent tendency to deviate in one direction from the true value of the population parameter. Systematic errors are divided in further two parts. These are respondent error and administrative error. Respondent error are those errors when respondents do not cooperate or give false answers. And administrative errors are those caused by improper administrator or execution of a research task. So respondent errors are basically those errors which are from respondent side, and administrative errors are those errors which are generally made by the interviewer or the one who is going to do who is going to conduct the research, or we can call him as surveyor. Respondent errors can be further categorized in two categories. One is non-response error and another one is response bias. Respondent errors, when we talk about non-response errors, when you go to ask a question from the respondent, he might or might not respond. When he does not respond, then it is a kind of non-response error. Only a few surveys have 100% response rates. A researcher who obtains an 11 or 12% response to a 5-page questionnaire concerning anything faces a very serious problem, because if you are going to ask the questions from thousands of people and only a few of them reply, then it is also a very serious concern, because you will not be able to get actual reason then, because if people are not responding, then how will you go to the actual problem? So that is a kind of serious concern. That is why we have so many kind of alternatives through which you can conduct survey. You can go for personal interviews, you can go for telephonic interviews, you can go for mail interviews, you can mail people and ask their responses. So either way, at least either way, someone will respond. So we can reduce non-response error by employing all the possible alternatives for survey. But sometimes non-response error is like, maybe somebody is not at home, no contact error is that, right? A potential respondent who is not at home or who is otherwise inaccessible on the first and second attempts at contact, then surveyor or interviewer might not contact them at third time. That is also kind of non-response error, and that cannot be solved, I think. Then refusal, a person who is unwilling to participate in a research project. That is also kind of non-response error. Or maybe sometimes elderly people are at home and they are not willing, they do not understand, and sometimes they are not willing to disclose any kind of information. They fear to disclose anything, even their views. So that is also kind of non-response error. Sometimes female, they don't even open the gates when they are alone at home. So that is also kind of non-response error. For example, surveyor go and ask questions, or surveys maybe happening from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Then few homes in which working ladies are there, nobody is at home, so you will never be able to get their responses. If you go to their homes from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You have to go either before 9 a.m. or after 5 p.m. to ask their views on any particular situation you want to solve, right? So these are different kind of non-respondent errors, and these can be solved if you actually know what is the main cause of no response, right? Then response biases are also there. These can be either deliberately falsified, or unconscious misrepresentation is also there sometimes. Because when you sometimes for example somebody is responding, sometimes I might not respond properly for a question because I think the other person should feel good about me, should not take me negative, so I might not respond about the actual answer. I might deliberately give the false information about something. That is deliberate falsification. But sometimes unconscious misrepresentation is there that can happen from both the sides. Maybe respondent did not understand the question properly, or when he answered, then researcher might not have understood his answer properly. So these two examples are of unconscious misrepresentation. So this can happen in response bias. These are administrative errors. We'll discuss them just after the respondent errors. Non-response error, we just discussed. People who refuse to cooperate, they are not at home. Self-selection bias is also there. Yes, sometimes people just respond to situations when they are extremely happy or they are extremely angry about something. For example, I visit a restaurant. If I was treated very badly, I will definitely respond to the questionnaire lying there. I will give them the feedback, negative feedback. Or if I'm normally treated, I don't even look at the feedback counter and I'll come back home. When suppose somebody has been given a surprise, then they'll be very happy and that person might feel very positive feedback. So when it comes to self selection bias, yeah, over represents extreme positions and under represents indifference. This happens because when extreme positions are there, you'll be definitely giving the feedback that over represents them, and those who are indifferent to anything, that will be underrepresented. So these are all non-response errors. Response bias, again, deliberate falsification, and these occur when people knowingly misrepresent answer, and unconscious happen when the answer, either answer or the question has been misinterpreted. Let us discuss all the response biases one by one. Number one, acquiescence bias. What is it? You while doing the survey, you might find people who are just agreeable to everything. A category of response bias that results because some individuals tend to agree with all questions or to concur with a particular position. They always say yes, yes, yes to everything. So that means if you find such people while doing survey, that might give another direction to the actual results of survey. So that is also a kind of error because of the respondents answers. Then extremity bias. Some people are extreme while answering. They will either say strongly agree or strongly disagree to situations. They would never be neutral. They would never be normally agreeing or disagreeing to situations. This is actually a category of response bias that results because response styles vary from person to person. Some individuals tend to use extremes when responding to questions, and that is something which goes negative with the survey. Because when you have people like them in your survey, if they are more, then you'll find extreme results, and those who would be neutral or just agreeing or just disagreeing to the situation would be lesser. So that also gives some falsified reports. Then interviewer bias. Response bias may also occur because of an interplay between interviewer and respondent. That occurs because the presence of the interviewer is influencing the answers given by the respondent. Sometimes the respondent get influenced by the interviewer up to that extent that he wants to be in the good books of the interviewer. That is also one of the reason that interviewer bias happens. For example, you might get influenced by the person who is well dressed, well behaved, and you want the person to think positive about you. Then you will be giving all positive answers about the product, even if you don't agree to them, right? So that is a kind of interviewer bias. Then auspice bias. What is it? Bias is in the responses of subjects caused by the respondents being influenced by the organization conducting the study. Sometimes I might be influenced by the organization who is conducting the study. This might be in my mind that yes, this department is very good, this company is very good, so I'll agree to everything related to that company. I'll be very positive about the survey. I'll be very happy that I'm being part of that survey, and I'll be responding happily and just positive about all the questions. So that is also a kind of bias which might lead to negative results. Negative in the sense, not the actual results of the survey. Then social desirability bias. Bias in responses caused by respondents' desire, either conscious or unconscious, to gain prestige or appear in a different social role. Sometimes I know that I don't agree to the situation, or this is not actually a good situation, good product, or good service, something like that. But still, I want to be in the good books of the interviewer as well as the company. And I feel like if I'll be giving such responses, then I'll be gaining more social status, or I'll be treated as prestigious or something like that, right? So this social desirability bias also gives us some unnatural results of the survey. Then administrative errors. These errors till now were the errors made by respondents, sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously as well. It was not like 100% conscious attempt of respondents that they are giving different results. Sometimes they unconsciously do that. They want to be in the good books of the interviewers. They want company to feel good about them, right? So many things are there, but these all give you unnatural results in survey, so that goes negative. That is why we call them errors, respondent errors. Now researcher errors, you can call these administrative errors, or maybe interviewer error, or maybe surveyor error. These are: number one, improper administration of the research task. This might happen because of the work done by research task which was improper. Maybe you have not developed questionnaire properly, maybe questions are poorly structured, maybe they are not aligned properly. These might be the reasons. Or some blunders might, these blunders might take you to some confusions, some neglecting answers, or some omissions sometimes. How, for example, you have not made a good questionnaire, and maybe there are overlapping statements, or maybe some statements missing which should have been included, or maybe some false statements are there, some statements which are not actually understood by the respondents. So this might lead to some confusions. Maybe respondent might feel like the same question was asked in another language now, and this is asked in another language. They might not understand the proper reason for you to be asking the question. They might neglect them because they don't feel like answering the question again and again, and because of that they might omit other questions as well. They might refuse to answer other questions too. So these errors can be reduced by the researcher by properly reviewing the questionnaire again and again. These errors are: number one, data processing error, a category of administrative error that occurs because of incorrect data entry, incorrect computer programming, or other error during the data analysis. Sometimes researcher might have done the work well, but while entering the data, for example, one question can have five responses: 1 2 3 4 5. I have coded the data as 1 2 3 4 5, but while entering I might type 2 instead of 3 sometimes, or maybe 3 instead of 2 sometimes. Sometimes it also happens I have typed 2 times and it is 22 now. These can be corrected later on, but if I have typed 3 instead of 2, then it cannot be corrected later on, because I will not be able to know what response I have typed wrongly. But in case of 22, I can easily check it because it is a 2-digit response, and otherwise it should have been 1-digit response. There are techniques where we can actually modify the data when I have typed 2 instead of 2, but I cannot find it out whether I typed, if I typed 3 instead of 2. These kind of mistakes are uh, actually very, little hard to find out. So we should take care while actually doing the data entry process. We should be very careful while entering the data, because we have done so much of efforts while doing the survey. We have prepared questionnaire, we have gone to people to ask the questions, right? So now if we don't enter the data properly, it would, the whole process would be of no use. Then second is sample selection error. Sometimes we do some errors while selecting the sample as well. An admin error caused by improper selection of a sample. Sample should be proper. If sample is not properly defined in the starting, then the whole process is going to help you in nothing. Then interviewer error. Interviewer error is admin error caused by failure of an interviewer to record responses correctly. Sometimes interviewer is not able to to actually record 100% responses due to certain reasons. For example, the other person's language is unknown to the interviewer and he is not able to record all the responses properly, right? Sometimes due to the misunderstanding of different answer, or maybe sometimes we get such respondents who do not reply to all the questions. Sometimes it happens, right? So these are also these would be counted as interviewer error, because he should have been able to ask all the questions from the respondents. Then last is interviewer cheating. Yes, this is very important. The practices of filling in fake answers or falsifying questionnaires while working as an interviewer is very bad. Sometimes interviewers do that. When you are doing some study for yourself, then you will not do it definitely. But when you are conducting a study for somebody else, sometimes people do that. Sometimes they feel like nobody is checking it, whether they have actually gone to people and asked them the questions. They feel it just like that. So that is actually the deliberate attempt from the interviewer side, and that is why it is known as interviewer cheating. That's all. These all are the errors. Let us have a look at the errors once again. These are all the errors. Total error, that is being divided in two parts: systematic error and random sampling error. Random sampling error is something that happens due to sampling. That would be discussed in coming chapters, that how can we reduce this error. But this can only be reduced by increasing the sample size plus distributing the sample properly. So these two things would be discussed, that how should we distribute the sample and how much samples should be taken from the whole population so as to reduce this particular error. All the other errors which are not related to sample selection are known as systematic error, and these errors can be divided in two parts. One is administrative error and another one is respondent error. Administrative errors can be called as interviewer errors as well, and respondent errors are from the respondent point of view. Administrative errors are 4 errors: data processing errors while processing the data, while filling up the entries; sample selection error, selection of sample might be wrong; interviewer error, he might have not recorded the answers properly, uh, non-deliberately; interviewer cheating, that he is deliberately cheating on responses. Then respondent errors are non-response and response bias. Non-response errors are the errors which are due to non-response of the people, of the participants, of the respondents. That might be due to any reason. Sometimes people deliberately do that, and sometimes they are not available to answer the questions. Response biases, these might happen due to either deliberately giving the false responses, or sometimes some misrepresentation of answers is also possible. Sometimes it is unconsciously misunderstood as well. These are of 5 kinds: acquiescence bias, extremity bias, interviewer bias, social desirability bias, and auspicious error. These all errors are either through agreeing to every situation, or extremity bias is being either extremely happy or extremely sad about something, either extremely agreed or extremely disagreeing with something. Interviewer bias, maybe you might want to show as respondent that you are too good to the interviewer. You might get influenced with the interviewer's dressing and the way he is talking. Then social desirability bias, you want to be in good books, and sometimes you might be very happy with the company, so you will not go with negative answers. That might be the reason, right? But this all results in some errors in survey research, so these should be avoided. Let us go with some questions now. True, false. Number one, two major sources of survey error are random sampling error and systematic error. Is it true? Yes, these are main sources, random sampling and systematic error. True. Second, unless sample size is increased, random sampling errors are unavoidable in survey research. Is it? Yes, this is actually the thing. Until and unless you increase the sample size, random sampling errors will be unavoidable. These can be reduced, number one, by increasing the sample size, and then by other things. So it is true. Systematic errors are also called non-sampling errors. Yes, systematic errors are actually non-sampling errors. Sampling errors, you can even divide errors, total errors, in two parts: sampling and non-sampling errors. We call sampling errors as random sampling errors, and non-sampling errors are known as systematic errors. So it is true. Fourth, sample bias exists when the result of a sample show a persistent tendency to deviate in one direction from the true value of the population parameter. Yes, this is actually the definition of sample bias. It exists when the result of a sample show persistent tendency to deviate in one direction from the true value of population parameter. Number fifth, two general categories of systematic error are type 1 errors and type 2 errors. Is it? When you will be finishing the whole course, then you'll know type 1 and type 2 errors are basically specified for something else. Sometimes we might feel like, yes, type 1 and type 2 is good, but no, systematic errors are something else. Systematic errors are either respondent error and or administrative error. Respondent errors are from the respondent's point of view, and as administrators errors are either through you can even call them researchers errors or interviewers errors, right? So it is false. Last is non-response is a type of respondent error. Is it? Yes, it is the first kind of respondent error. Then self-assessment questions. Number one, a survey can collect information using which of the following techniques? Which of the techniques can be used while doing survey? You have to mention that. Surveys can be done with face-to-face interactions. These are called face-to-face interviews as well, or maybe through telephonic interviews, or maybe through emails. So you just have to list down all the possible techniques for survey and then answer them with examples. Second question is, which can be the target of survey research techniques? Who can be the target of survey research techniques? Is it only a consumer? No. You can target consumers for survey. You can target wholesalers for survey. You can target your own employees for the survey. You can target general population also for the survey. Whenever you are doing any kind of survey, it depends that what kind of the questions you have, what kind of the research problem you have. Depending on that, it is decided that who will become the respondent for your survey. This respondent can be anyone from your population. These can be consumers, they can be employees, these can be your suppliers, These can be the wholesalers or retailers. These can even be students, teachers, managers, anyone. Third, name and describe the types of response bias. What are the response bias types we have? We have discussed it, and these are acquiescence bias, a tendency to agree with all or most questions, then extremity bias, results because some individuals tends to use extremes when responding to questions, whether strongly agree or strongly disagree. Number third, interviewer bias occurs because the presence of the interviewer influences respondents' answers. Fourth is social desirability bias. It happens because it may occur either consciously or unconsciously because the respondent wishes to create a favorable impression or save face in the face of interviewer. And last is auspicious bias, that happens because you are actually influenced with the organization who is conducting the study. So you will be answering just positive, positive, positive about all the questions. So these were the response biases. That's it. Thank you.